and also because he was maybe a little too famous to treat in that way without some repercussions. So, you know, you say, what, only since 1700? Yeah, really, only since the starting of the separation of church and state could you get people talking, and that's when you got the quest for the historical Jesus. Albert Schweitzer wasn't the first, he was a long line of people. He summed up the quest for the historical Jesus in the 1800s. But people who had begun thinking, Spinoza had started thinking about these things in the 1600s. He was excommunicated by the Jewish community. They didn't have the power to do anything horrible to him, but they didn't want to be associated with him, so they cast him out in the sense of, look, he's Spinoza, he's a free thinker, don't, and he thought about religious things. He actually said, if only for circumcision, he thought the Jewish people would have survived. That was actually something out of one of his writings that I personally recall him saying, as we mentioned that particular practice today. And then, up until the 20th century, we didn't have external evidence like the scrolls to even make these evaluations on. So, okay, John has, shall I release to you the King of the Jews? And we did all of this, and the people, they don't want Jesus, they want Barabbas. Now, the only other interesting thing to say about Barabbas is his name, Bar Abbas, which means son of the Father, and of course that's Jesus' name. That's Jesus. I can't keep these things going on my. That's Jesus' name. He's supposed to be the son of the Father or the son of God. So people have said that Barabbas is a shadow inversion of Jesus. That basically the Barabbas thing is more of like the real event that happened, and then the Jesus story is written over it as an inversion of it. Now, you know, it's not my idea. I just leave you with that as something to contemplate. There's probably, I think the best authority for this is S.G.F. Brandon, who I told you about, Jesus and the Zealots, who, you know, really went deep into these kind of matters. Yeah.
Well, I had never known that Barabbas was the son of the Father. You just mentioned it earlier. I was sitting here the whole time thinking, if people are crying, let the son of the Father go, they're calling for Jesus to be released, right?
Well, that's what they would, that's the implication of what people like Brandon are trying to point out. Yeah. But anyway, the point is, I don't even get that far, because again, I don't know how these writers got this intimate information of the trial and scenes. I'm just not sure about material. Unless I can find something that, to me, historically recommends itself as sensible in this situation, I'm not able to even make evaluations of the kind you're making, but I've already expressed the opinion that we do know that Pontius Pilate was involved in the crucifixion of the Samaritan Messiah. And I'm wondering if there weren't some Samaritan texts, as I said, that were floating around that were then, you know, sometime later, because you said the Samaritan Messiah, as I told you, is Joshua ben Joseph, Jesus ben Joseph. Why is the Samaritan Messiah Joshua ben Joseph? Joshua, you know, and Jesus are supposed to be the same name. Jesus being an approximation for Joshua, Greekified perhaps. And by the way, when you see this here, you know, just the letters, I don't know where this name came from, but just look at the relation to things like ISIS here. I mean, J's were usually written with I in Greek. And forget the vowels. Just look at the relationship to other godlike names that are going on here. And we know that Isis and Osiris and Horus have a lot to do with the way the Holy Family was presented in later Christian iconography based on Egyptian models from Egyptian tombs. I'm not trying to go any further than that. I'm just trying to say I don't know where this material came from that is being incorporated here. But as you see, it isn't consistent because John counterindicates a lot of these things. But the Samaritan Taheb was supposed to be a Joshua redivivus, a Joshua brought back to life. And what he was doing was operating on the mountain in Samaria, where Joshua made his farewell speech in the book of Joshua, Mount Gerizim, I don't have time to go into all of that, but that's where Joshua assembles all of the tribes. We did that when we mentioned Stephen's speech and the mistakes that Stephen makes about the tomb of the patriarchs that he thinks is in Samaria and not in Hebron. He takes that from the Joseph stories. Now, why is Joshua associated with Joseph? Because if you look at the tribal denotations in the Old Testament, Joshua comes from what tribe? You probably wouldn't know that, most of you, but some of you do. What tribe is Joshua? Ephraim, and Ephraim is the principal son of Joseph, so he's a son of Joseph. And the Jews had two Messiahs, a Messiah ben David and a Messiah ben Joseph. That's the Talmudic literature speaks of that. And clearly they meant by the Messiah ben Joseph, the Samaritan Messiah, the Messiah of the northern tribes. So Jesus well, first of all, I've already expressed the opinion here that Joseph was not anything to do with Jesus' father. That we have enough material from Christian sources that make it very clear that Jesus' father is something to do with Clopas or Cleophas, who is considered to be a brother of Joseph in a lot of the sources. So there is that. Again, I've said in my James book, as the supernatural Christ took hold in the 2nd century, the idea that the Messiah was not a man, and then of course Trinitarianism developed in the 2nd and 3rd century. The idea that the Messiah was not a man took hold in the 2nd century, and we even know the book that it took hold in. It's called the Proto-Evangelium of James. I'm never going to get through this. The Proto-Evangelium of James. I don't know what's wrong today. Where the writers know that James is the closest person to Jesus. That's not the James, son of Zebedee, brother of John. That's James, the brother of Jesus. And in that document, they have James saying, because they know he should know the most about Jesus, Jesus is not my real brother, he's my milk brother, or something to that effect. And they announce the split in that document between James and Jesus' other brothers, and have James, Jesus' brother, admit that Jesus isn't his brother. So that's where we first get the split of the Jesus from his brothers, and the claim that Jesus has a different mother. In any case, the mother, it's not the different mother, it's the different father that's the